is a huge honor for me today to be podcast interviewing and endodontist Dr. Joel Small, DDS, MBA, FICD, on coaching the dental mind. Let me read his bio. Dr. Joel Small is a clinical endodontist, coach, entrepreneur, speaker, and the author of Face to Face, a leadership guide for healthcare professionals and entrepreneurs. In his coaching practice, Dr. Small works with a limited number of motivated healthcare professionals specializing in work with endodontists. His clients are looking to experience personal and professional growth while taking their business practices to a higher level. Together, they work to reduce their stress and time at work while seeing more profits. He received his Doctor of Dental Surgery degree and completed his residency in endodontics at the University of Texas School of Dentistry in Houston, Texas. He received his MBA with an emphasis in healthcare management from Texas Tech University. He is a graduate of the University of Texas in Dallas Jindal School of Management postgraduate program in executive coaching. Dr. Small is a co-owner of Phase 2 Associates, a dental consultancy and brokerage firm located in Dallas, Texas, that brokers restorative practices in Texas and specialty practices nationwide. Throughout his career, he remained committed to his profession. He has served the American Association of Endodontists as a member of numerous committees, including his service as a trustee of the Research and Educational Foundation. He has also served the AAE as one of their national spokespersons. He is a past president of the Southwest Society of Endodontists. He is a nationally recognized speaker on the subjects of leadership and professional development. And here it is, a Sunday at 11 a.m., and you decided to spend an hour with me. Joel, I am so thankful for that. Thank you so much for being on my show.
Well, thank you. I appreciate it very much.
So what percent of your practice, right? Tell us what you're doing mostly. Is it mostly with endodontist?
What my coaching, you mean?
Yes.
Actually, I have a good endodontic following, but I do work with restorative dentists as well. I mean, being a dentist and being a coach, I can coach anybody. Actually, I could coach people in in the business community. We're trained to coach executives and businesses and so forth. But because of my background, I chose to limit my practice to dentistry, because it's what I know best.
And so what do you do as a coach? And by the way, your website is Lead Face to Face, www.leadfacetoface.com, and you also have another website, www.phase2associates.com. So,
I have a third one now. I have a third one this evening. It has all of that on it, and it's joelsmall.com.
JOEL small SASMALL.com.
Right.
So talk about those three websites. What are you doing? What is coaching? What is Phase 2 Associates? What is joelsmall.com? What are you up to these days? Just take it from there and just rant.
Well, I think insanity runs in my family. I stay pretty busy. Phase 2 Associates is actually a brokerage consultancy where we broker dental practices. We started out initially brokering primarily or strictly specialty practices nationwide. We did endo-perioral surgery. Within the last 3 years, we opened up a brokerage firm in Texas for restorative practices as well. So we've been doing that for about 8 years now. My coaching practice is about a year and a half old. I graduated from the program back in August of last year, so it's about a year old. And I work with dentists. I help them develop the culture in their practices. I help them develop their leadership skills. I help them overcome blind spots and self-limiting beliefs that keep them from achieving their goals. Basically, coaching it's the number 2 fastest growing profession according to Forbes magazine, and it's the method of choice from among the Forbes 100 companies for training their leadership teams. And it's become very popular. It just doesn't have the recognition in dentistry that it may have in the general business community.
And what was the fastest growing? If coaching is the second fastest, do you remember what the first and the third was?
Well, no, I don't, to be honest with you, but I do know that was number 2.
So your coaching website is Lead Face to Face?
Well, actually, it's joelsmall.com.
So then what's Lead Face to Face?
Lead Face to Face is actually my blog now, and then I had, these were some old websites. One was Read Face to Face that would put you to my book and you could order it online. So, but everything is covered now in joelsmall.com.
And what's the name of your book? The Face to Face, a leadership guide for healthcare professionals and entrepreneurs.
That's it.
And it's available on Amazon.
It's available on Amazon or through my website.
So I want to ask you a question since you and I have seen this corporate dog twice. So back in the day when you and I were young, we saw Orthodontic Centers of America make it all the way to the New York Stock Exchange and a dozen on NASDAQ. And they all fabulously imploded.
Right.
And then they're gone for a decade and now they're back.
Right.
Are they back for good, or do you predict they will fabulously implode again?
I think they're here for good. I do. I think they're here for in some shape, manner, and form. I don't know. They're going to morph. I mean, I think there's going to be I think over time they'll morph, but I think they're here for good. I really do. I think we'll see that for certainly the remainder of my career and yours, and possibly for the foreseeable future.
And what's different about them this time than, say, Orthodontic Centers of America that made it to the coveted New York Stock Exchange, was the only dental services management organization to pull off that trick? Whereas we saw the biggest leader today, Heartland, they couldn't do an IPO on NASDAQ or the New York Stock Exchange. In fact, no one in Wall Street really would touch them. They had to go to Canada. So why do you think, based on, I mean, wouldn't you think if corporate dentistry today was fabulous and expanding with internally generated cash flow and building de novo offices out of cash flow, that they would have done an IPO on NASDAQ? I mean, isn't it kind of a litmus test to say, dude, if you couldn't go public, I mean, isn't that the litmus test of a business model? I mean, even LinkedIn went public.
Right, right. Well, I think the difference now really has nothing to do with the corporate dentistry. I think it's the mindset of the dentists now that are coming out of the programs and the debt service that they're having to carry, which I think is a huge factor. You know, we see that a lot because I have the brokerage company as well. And, some of the specialists, for example, coming out of residency programs, $500,000 in debt. And the traditional model for them to come into a practice as an associate doesn't allow for a salary. And of course, we're pushing that with a lot of our sellers to bring somebody on with a salary base. Here's the difference, Howard. When you and I graduated from dental school, I went down to McAllen, Texas, which is 10 miles from the Mexican border, and set up an endodontic practice. Man, what a mistake that was. Okay, it was a economically deprived area. I was there for 3 years, and I felt like I was selling Hoover vacuum cleaners. Okay, because trying to sell a root canal to the patient was like trying to sell a Hoover vacuum cleaner. I picked up and left after 3 years, basically closed the practice because there were no other endodontists down there, and everybody else was smarter than I was and didn't want to go down there. And I walked away from it, came up to Plano, Texas, and I've been there since 1981. Today, kids, the young dentists today cannot come out of a dental school and do that. They would be totally overrun by the debt service they have to carry. It's just not possible for them to stumble.
And that's where Heartland was the most successful, because I think Rick saw a crisis in liquidity. I mean, every dentist I know, was Bruce Beard, whoever, that was doing 2, 3, 4, 5 million a year, they had an illiquid asset. They were never going to sell. So when they realized that Heartland could come in and write you a check, I think if you could say what was the number one most genius thing Rick Workman did, was providing liquidity to all the practices. Like if you want to sell a house and it's 3-bedroom, 2-bath, you can sell it in a week in Phoenix. But if you want to sell some, 10,000 square foot monster house with a 5-car garage, you better wait till somebody gets drafted in the NBA or the NFL, because you own that house. It has no liquidity. And what Rick has done so geniusly is provided liquidity to probably 1,000 offices around the country that couldn't sell. Would you agree with that?
Well, we're still seeing the practices sell, but yes, you're right. I mean, Heartland does offer it's a pretty quick turnaround for a dentist. They're offering a pretty good amount for the practices. We're still seeing practices sell in the metropolitan areas. You get rural now and you're having some problems, but we do see the practices selling now. But I think from the viewpoint of the younger dentist, they offer them an income to start out with. Now, are they going to stay with Heartland? Are they going to stay with the corporate dentistry? Who knows? I mean, some of them will. A lot of them will go out and look for other opportunities, either as an associate somewhere or buying a practice. We're seeing a lot of that as well. But I'm not as down on corporate dentistry as some people think. I think they provide a service for certain aspects of our profession. Take, for example, I was at an AAE course and they had a female dentist there talking about her experience with corporate dentistry. Well, she has children at home. She doesn't want to own a practice. She wants to be able to get in and out of the practice, to have her schedule set so she can, be there for her children. And corporate dentistry allows that, where business ownership would not. So there are certain aspects of corporate dentistry that actually do meet certain people's needs and criteria. So I'm not as down on it as some. I do think that there has to be a change in how they're handling some of the dentists, and of course, historically, how they handled decisions regarding treatment planning and so forth. The dentist has to be in charge of that. I think there's no question about it.
Well, as far as saying if you're down on it, down or good, well, the market's who speaks. And I mean, look at the market. I mean, there are now 35 large corporate dental office
Sure.
chains doing 12 to 15% of the market, employing 8,000 dentists with over $6 billion annual revenue. In the U.S. market of dentistry is 129 billion a year, with 955,000 employees and 175,000 locations. So what Rick has done geniusly, he provided liquidity to the selling doctor, and he's providing jobs to graduates. And a lot of these dentists bitching about corporate dental offices, their office open 32 hours a week out of 168 hours a week, and you don't see them offering any jobs for associates. Then when they all come out and go work for Heartland, they all bitch that Heartland's hiring all the dental graduates. Well, you didn't offer them a job.
Right.
So,
Right.
yeah.
Right.
So you said the difference between the back in the day, the first round, the Orthodontic Centers of America, and all the ones on NASDAQ now, was a difference in mindset, also student loan debt. Do you think another variable that was the fact that now in corporate, we see 65% of the dentists being female? You graduated. How many women were in your class, and how many? And now it's half women. How many women were you graduating from dental school class back in 1978?
Less than 10, probably 5.
5 out of how many?
120.
5 out of 120.
Right.
And those were some brave women back in the day, weren't they?
Yes, they were.
So you said practices are selling urban, but not rural. So if you're a kid listening to this and you just walked out with $350,000 of debt and you're 25, 26 years old, what's reality if they wanted to go buy a practice? Or tell them, are they going to have to work a couple years? Are they going to have to pay down some debt? Is there a size of a practice that sells like a 3-bedroom, 2-bath? Are there other dental offices that are kind of illiquid? Who's selling? Who's buying?
Well, I'll tell you what the discussion with the young dentist goes like this. Number one, do you have previous experience? In other words, they're coming out, say, of a residency program. Have you practiced general dentistry before? How many years? Because what we don't want them to do is to say, buy $1 million practice, but not be able to produce $1 million worth of dentistry. Okay, and there's a certain aspect of temperament, hand speed, all those things that go into being a successful practitioner that when you come right out of school, you don't have. I mean, let's face it, you didn't have it, I didn't have it particularly. If you're going to go out and buy a big practice, you better be able to produce that kind of dentistry and do it well. Otherwise, it does two things. One, your chance of failure is greatly increased, and number two, the stress level is almost unbearable trying to produce that kind of dentistry. So we have that kind of discussion with young dentists. So we match people up as far as their needs and their opportunities. When we have a practice available, we know what our buyers are looking for, we know what their capabilities are, and we try and match those up. So that's the best thing we can do for a client. And as far as what's selling, certain areas are hot right now. Texas is very hot right now. I mean, not just weather-wise. I'm talking, dental practice-wise. It's a very business-friendly state. There's no state income tax. Certain people are leaving places like California or New York or whatever, coming down here. So we're getting hundreds and hundreds of calls all the time. Is there a practice available in Texas? It's just like it used to be in California. The rural practices, you have to be either. You may want to go there, but does your spouse want to go there? That's usually the issue. You can find a dentist that wants to go there, but does the spouse really want to go to a small town? So it's taking longer to sell those practices. I have to tell you, Howard, some of those practices are extremely profitable.
Oh my God, I've been saying that for 30 years. The guy, if you ever find a practice does $1 million, doesn't take any PPOs, and nets 400, they're in a town of 5,000.
Exactly.
So what you're saying is divorce your existing wife who wants to live in the big city, and moved to the rural. Can I quote you on that?
Okay, Howard, it could be divorce your existing husband now. Remember that, okay?
Oh yeah, that's right. I didn't even realize. Oh my God, that was so bad. But yeah, I mean, the data I read, and it's hard to get clean data, but it looks like about 2/3 of the dentists are practicing in 117 major metros where half of the United States lives, and
Mhm.
the other 1/3 of the dentists are practicing in 19,022 towns where the other half of America lives. So that alone tells you, I mean, rule number one in business demographics is go where they ain't.
Right.
And they're just not going where there ain't. I mean, I watch it when they come to Phoenix. They all go to North Scottsdale because they think that's where all the rich people live.
Sure.
And there's 14 million dentists on every corner, and the houses where the people live are consuming an acre. And then you go to the west side of Phoenix where it's poor, an acre of apartments might have 50 people living on it, and there's hardly any dentists over there. I mean, you just see that over and over and over. So you're a generation nexter, or you're a baby boomer.
I'm a boomer.
You're a boomer. Do you think the millennials are working less in your mind?
That's a good question. I see some that are incredibly capable and have incredibly good work ethics, and I think that what we're seeing now it's not, and I don't think it's the millennials necessarily. I think what you said earlier really kind of encapsulates everything. We're seeing a lot of women in the workforce, and their needs are different, very different from what you and our needs were when we graduated. And I think we're seeing the whole market change to accommodate those needs. And I think the women have had a huge impact on what we're seeing in the dental market right now. As far as their work ethic, I've actually been very impressed. Now, I will tell you, when you go talk to one of the old codgers like myself, and you talk to them about their previous associates, their first comment is they don't want to work. Okay, I hear that so many times from dentists. I don't know about associates. I had one who didn't want to work. Well, being a coach, I say, well, what does that mean? And I have them explain that to me. Sometimes I think there's a little disconnect between our generation and millennials as far as communicating what our expectations are of these people. And so a lot of times that's where the breakdown occurs in the communication. But from my experience, I've run across some extremely capable and hardworking young dentists that I'm encouraged by the generation. Actually, I'm not discouraged.
Yeah, I'm most encouraged when you take a dozen of them out on some missionary dental trip in like Mexico, or I've been with a group in Tanzania, and oh my God, their heart is in the right place, and
Absolutely.
that's the main thing. I mean, I watched that in Mexico where I was dead dog tired, and started calling it a day. But you'd see the line standing out there, and they were going to stand in line all night long in the rain. And these dentists were all saying, "Well, I feel guilty sleeping. I mean, she's standing out there in the rain with a toothache. I'm just going to keep going." And I mean, it actually brought tears to my eyes. It was unbelievable.
You
So
know,
what if you're a dentist selling your practice? I mean, you sell general dentist, endo, perio, oral surgery, or do they? Is there any easy rule of thumbs of what a general dentist office is selling? Is it an EBITDA number, interest for earnings, taxes, depreciation, amortization, a multiple of earnings and net income, or is it really just a multiple of sales, regardless of what the overhead is? I mean, if you have a practice that what is the basic formulas for general dentists versus specialty practices like endo, perio, and oral surgery?
well, understand first of all that when you buy a practice, you're buying an income stream is what you're buying. Okay, so really with
But
that,
is the income stream just total revenue, or is it just net income earnings?
oh no, of course not, because somebody could have gross revenues of 1 million but have 800,000 in overhead. So that's not going to be nearly as valuable. Somebody's got 1 million in gross revenue and 500,000 in their overhead, so 50%. In general, restorative practices sell at a higher multiple than specialty practices because they have a recurring patient base. Endo, and if you were going to go rule of thumb, which I don't always recommend, endo is going to sell somewhere between the 60 to 75 range. Oral surgery probably 65 to 75. Perio probably in there, and then restorative will be a little bit higher because they have a patient base, which is
Like how much higher?
what? Pardon me? Yeah, they'll sell higher.
But what you said the other three were 60 to 60.
They're probably 75 to 80% in restorative practices.
I want to open up a whole other can of worms if you don't mind saying with me. It's Sunday, but there's the Dallas Cowboys aren't playing today, and neither the Arizona Cardinals, and so we might have a little time. Talk about the future of practice transitions. Do you see that changing in your career from back in the day to going forward?
Oh gosh, absolutely. Howard, back in the 50s, dentists would just close their door and walk away. I mean, you know who was the dental transition people? You know who they were?
Alan F. Thornburg of AFCO?
Well, no. Even before that, they were dental sales reps. And the reason was the dental sales reps knew people that were looking for practices or coming out of school. And they also were in practices and they saw someone getting ready to retire and they would put them together. And that was how dental transitions actually started. Then people started to realize that there's actually value in a dental practice. You can actually sell it at the end of your career. But I tell you what we're seeing today, which is kind of sad, and I usually have a bell curve which shows the growth phase, the plateau phase, and then decline. So many of the practitioners today, for whatever reason, whether it be the decline in the economy, the dot-com failure, the recession, whatever, are waiting until they're so far down the backside of that bell curve that there's very little left to sell, if anything, because the fixed expenses do not change. Yet when your production decreases, the margin of profit becomes so small that there's nothing there to sell. And we're seeing a lot of that today, and which is really kind of sad because now's a great time to sell a practice. It is definitely a seller's market right now. And with interest rates being at historically low levels, these young doctors can get the loans. The money is there.
And to explain to these kids, what do you mean by historic low interest rates? I remember when I got out of school in 87, my first house I bought, I thought I was the smartest guy in Phoenix because I was getting my house financed at 12%. The seller was into it at 14%. And one of my buddies just locked into a house at a high 12%. And I remember when I was a senior in high school, a couple of my best friends' father, the interest rates hit 21%, and they had open debt, which means the interest rate floated 200 basis points over prime. And when prime hit 21%, Dad actually went in the barn and blew his head off. And so now, what is interest rates now for a loan?
You can get a practice loan if, assuming you're credit worthy, have decent credit, 3.9%.
And is that interest rate locked in if interest rates start tacking up a quarter every?
It is.
So so when you said when dentists are calling you, blah blah blah, how can they call you? I mean, will you give out? How does one of my homies listening to you right now ask a question, because they all got questions? How can they contact you?
Well, if you can contact me through Phase 2. You can contact me through my coaching. Phase 2. Do you want a phone number? I'll give it to you.
Sure.
214-540-8085. That'll put you into Phase 2 Associates.
Give it again.
214-540-8085.
What if they're emailers?
You can contact me at jsmalldds@phase2associates.com, and that's all spelled out longhand. TWO for the 2, phase2associates.com.
Okay, that's J Small
DDS.
at J Small DDS at phase2associates.com.
Right.
And they could go leadfacetoface.com and get your contact there, or phase2associates.com. Joel, thank you so much for spending an hour with me, buddy. Any last words?
No, just go to, it's joelsmall.com would be the one they want to go to. Lead Face to Face was the old one, but joelsmall.com. And Howard, my goal is for everybody to be as successful as you have been. You're to be commended.
Well, I don't know about that, but I'm glad you changed your name from Lead Face to Face to Joel Small, because my mom said I have a face for radio, not TV, and so mine would be Lead Voice to Voice. But hey, Joel, thank you so much for all you've done. If you ever want to put a course on Dental Town or repost some of your blogs, I think it'll make your website explode. It'd be the best marketing you did.
Thank you. I appreciate it. Thank you for the insightful interview. I appreciate it.
And now I want you to say that even though you live in Texas, deep down in your heart, you're truly an Arizona Cardinals fan, and you're not one of those obnoxious Dallas Cowboy fans.
Well, I won't admit to that, but thank you for the interview.
Okay, buddy. We'll see you on the football field in a few months.
All right.
Bye-bye.